Hello, lovely people, and welcome. Today I am working on an abstract piece, and this piece was kind of fun because it changed as I went along. I started seeing different things in it, and that changed what I did. What I'm using here are Liquitex Basics Acrylics in Hunter Green, sorry, not Hunter Green, Hooker's Green for the background. And the other colors I will be using are Golden Fluid Acrylics in Iridescent Bright Gold, Iridescent Silver, and Iridescent Bronze. And I will be also using Liquitex Basics in Sap Green. And what I did was I started by putting on a background in the Hooker's Green, and I had my paints fairly thin because I wanted to be able to work with them and let them blend into each other fairly easily. And I found that had the side effect of having the edges of the canvas kind of go bald easily. The paint kind of would go off the edges and leave not entirely bare spots, but thinner areas of paint. So I did have to go back a couple of times and add a little bit of paint onto that. And my plan here was to do a simple swipe and to put the metallics in the 3 different colors along near the bottom. I didn't want it centered, and to swipe up with the, this is a plastic commuter rail pass from a previous month, which is a nice flexible plastic that works okay for swipes, and I kind of like it. And then to see how that looked, and when I was looking at it, I decided that it was kind of making me feel foresty. Here I had to adjust because I noticed that my bottom line hadn't been very level and it was bothering me. And so I started thinking in terms of a foreground and background, which I hadn't been thinking about at the beginning. But it kind of felt to me like there's a background there and then a foreground. So I put in all these little metallic dots in the foreground, but I decided I wanted them to blend a little more. So I took a damp paper towel and just put it down on top of them. I didn't pull or swipe at all. I just lifted it back off. And that gave enough blending that I kind of liked it. And so now it feels to me a little bit like kind of a foresty background with a glade effect, and then maybe a field in front, very, very approximately. It's still extremely abstract. But I kind of liked the idea of having the background be more of a forest or trees or something like that, more separated. So I went in with my sap green with a darker green because I also wanted more variance in the green I had. And these are nice little bottles with very thin tips. They're actually little tiny cylinder metal tips. And they let me put in nice thin lines if I want to between the paint, set it down into the paint and then let it blend. So I went in and did a bunch of that, and I also added some green down in the foreground. And this, I really, really liked what I was starting to see when I did this. And then I tilted the paint back and forth a little bit to let it kind of soften and blend and mix a little more. And as I was doing this, I was continuing to see something sort of foresty, something sort of background and foreground like, and I worked on emphasizing that foreground separation because I actually really liked the way that worked. And as I kept doing this, I started thinking that I wanted more. I thought the metallics were a little too blended up in the top area where I had done the swipe. I think the colors were too similar, and so when I did the swipe they got mixed a little too much. So I went back in with those colors in the same kinds of little squeeze bottles with thin tips so that I can just kind of put in these wavy lines and keep separation between the 3 different metallic colors. It's a little hard to see. Metallics are always hard to see on video, and the difference between them isn't always easy to see. But I kept working on that, and as I did that, I started looking at it, and I still see it foresty, but I also started to see movement in it. I feel like there's more life in it than there was before. And so I kept working with that, kind of looking at that, looking at defining where the bottom edges of these trees or what have you were, and the separation, and then layering these lines, going back in with the green to try to separate different items from each other, different trees. And as I looked and saw the movement, I started to kind of see dancers in this. Started to look to me, again, not literal in any sense of the word, much more abstract, but I started to see movement, and I kind of started to see forms and shapes in it. So as I continued to work on it here, I tried to emphasize that a little bit and add in, when I added in more paint, make it kind of go along with those shapes and forms. And then at the end, let it sit for a little and wipe the paint off from under the edges so it wouldn't pull and change too much. And then let it dry and varnished it. And I'm pretty pleased with this. Let me know if you see the figures too, if you think that it worked. It was a really interesting process. Anyway, please, if you like this, like and subscribe, and take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be well. Thank you so much for coming and listening to this. Take care. Bye.